There's some confusion about what more there is for the Ukrainians together with the Americans to do, because after their recent meetings in Geneva, they said that they had come up with basically a revised version of the plan, and the feeling was that the ball was in Russia's court, and the feeling very strongly here in Ukraine was that Russia would refuse the revised plan and probably would have refused the original plan anyway. Vladimir Putin, on a visit to Bishkek, said that there was no point in signing anything with Volodymyr Zelensky because he considers Volodymyr Zelensky to be illegitimate, because there haven't been elections in Ukraine and Volodymyr Zelensky's term expired, no matter that elections in Russia for the past, I don't know how many, have not been recognized by the international community as being free and fair, that there's no opposition, and also that the dismissal of Andrii Yermak was proof that Ukraine's democratic institutions are functioning and independent agencies can investigate corruption. All the same, Vladimir Putin manages to troll out this argument whenever a peace agreement looms on the horizon as an excuse for not signing it. More fundamentally, no matter what they discuss today, Ukrainian and international analysts agree there are points that clearly are not reconciled between the two sides. Ukraine has said clearly it's not willing to give up territory that the Russians haven't taken by force. I mean, that's in terms of just letting the Russians have it de facto and agreeing to a ceasefire, I mean to a peace agreement. The Ukrainians have said that's a no-go. The Russians have made it clear that they want to take the whole of the rest of Donetsk region, and they want the Ukrainians to give it up, and if the Ukrainians don't give it up, then they're going to carry on fighting for it. That's just one point that seems very, very hard to reconcile. Another that perhaps hasn't received quite as much attention as others is the question of amnesty. In the original plan put forward by the Russians and the Americans, there was this idea of a blanket amnesty. International lawyers here in Kiev have been saying very clearly that there is no precedent for an amnesty for war crimes of this kind when they're committed by members of one state's army against another. There have at times been truth commissions where countries such as Rwanda work things out through discussing it and through the perpetrators admitting their guilt, but there's no precedent for that when it's one country against another, and these are serious atrocities that Russian soldiers are accused of in Ukraine, and a lot of people in Ukraine and internationally are absolutely not willing to agree to something that would give them amnesty.
Yeah, and so in the meantime, the fighting continues. What's the latest information you have on that front?
Well, the battle for Donetsk region is still ongoing, with Russian soldiers having taken control of a large part of the town of Pokrovsk, not so much of the adjacent town of Mirnograd, which forms a sort of urban area with Pokrovsk, but that's one of the key strategic towns in Donetsk region. Another is Konstantinivka, where small groups of Russian soldiers have been infiltrating the town, and Konstantinivka and Druskivka a bit further to the north are towns that have now become very, very difficult for civilians to live in because they're constantly being hit by drones. And that is becoming true also of Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, the big two towns that are still 100% Ukrainian held in Donetsk region. So more and more civilians are leaving there. The situation there is difficult, but Ukrainian soldiers and analysts don't think that the Russians are going to be able to send troops into those towns anytime soon. There are big fortifications in between where the Russian troops are at the moment and those towns. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians also started losing ground in Zaporizhia region, where the front had remained frozen for a long time. In recent weeks, the Russians have made gains there. There's a battle going on for stabilizing the situation, as the Ukrainians put it, around the town of Hulaipole, a medium-sized town in Zaporizhia region, where there are reports that the Russians had entered parts of that town too.
Gulliver Cragg reporting from Kyiv.